Good morning, good day, and good evening, and good afternoon. We do have this annual event every year, and every year we end it up with me doing the presentation on what is our roadmap. And I'm going to do this presentation today as well, and then Andrew Bulanov, our VP of Engineering, is going to make a live presentation on some of the new features and functionalities that we're delivering. From practical standpoint of view, we do not have too much changes in terms of our roadmap and expectation since the last time I did the presentation on the our annual summit in the Las Vegas this year. And from that standpoint of view, I will use almost the same presentation with some of the alterations, and will reiterate it because not any of you has been on the summit, and I think that repeating it will not damage much. There will be some new things, but let's go and let's see. So let's start. So first of all, I will start with this slide that highlights our platform priorities and what we're really working on right now. So our priority number one right now is basically modernization of the platform and new user interface and user experience. And when we're talking about the modernization of the platform, it comes up to two things primarily. First one is implementation of the new user interface, and that will be my next slide, an explanation of what we are doing there. And second one is the migration of the Acumatica runtime to the .NET Core. Both of these projects has been started probably 2 years ago. They're in process. We do have a reasonable to good progress on all these tasks, which I will discuss later. The second priority is the task that we launched last year, that is a relatively fresh, and that task is about the data and the data insights. And this task is dedicated to improving our reporting services and improving the information that user can get out of the system. That includes how the data presented, how the data extracted, what kinds of visualization you can have, and everything related with the reports, dashboards, inquiries, and data presentation. And the last priority that we do have as a platform is a low-code, no-code customization. And this is something new compared to the presentation that I did during the summit. Because on summit I was mentioning talking low-code, no-code customization, but we never actually went into the detail and highlighted which components it consists of and what is our roadmap towards to that and what you can expect in this area. And beside that, a lot of efforts that we spent last and this year comes to various kind of performance and optimizations. Fortunately, our customer base is growing. We start to have more and more customers, and customers are getting bigger. And we're starting to face various kind of performance challenges where the system needs to be really fine-tuned, optimized, some new functionality that has been released gets used more intensively. And with that one, we allocate a very big amount of our time and efforts on various kind of refactoring, performance optimizations, improving the various aspects of the system so system acts more predictable and reliable under the corner situation, like high payload, high volume of transactions, and other corner cases. So with that one, let's move to the first item, that is a modernization and the new user interface. So this slide is essentially illustrates what we are doing in terms of our new user interface architecture and how it's going to work. And I talk a little bit to explain the idea behind that for those of you who didn't see this slide. For those who've seen it, I apologize for repeating it. And later, Andrew will do a presentation on how it works in reality. So from practical standpoint of view, we replace ASP.NET web forms technology with a new technology that is based on Aurelia platform. We didn't change our choice, and we will continue with Aurelia on this one. and using the Node.js on the backend to prepare the Aurelia package and compile it, and implementing the new API, which basically will be an API that distinguishing the business logic that we know as a graph object on the server from the user interface. And this API will be unified between the various kind of clients, like API clients, browser client, mobile client, and so on. And at the same point of time, it will serve for us as a public API of the graph for the low-code, no-code customization. From practical standpoint of view, the way it works will be following. We basically will use a TypeScript that will take the information from the business object and create two layers. One layer will be a view model layer, which incorporates the structure of the object and certain kind of presentation business logic in TypeScript. And second one is a view layer that is essentially HTML templates written with the Aurelia platform. Both of them will support extensions in order to customize and extend the appearance of the screens. Then we will use the transpilation process. Transpilation process is a process that is similar to the compilation on the compilable objects, that basically walks through the code, resolves all the dependencies, make sure that code is compilable, TypeScript is compilable and converted to the JavaScript, and at the same point of time, you can do a certain kind of transformations during this process. So one transformation, and the result of the transpilation is basically Aurelia web package that will be loaded into the browser. But at the same point of time, during the transpilation process, we will extract the information from the view model and will provide this information as a description of the business object towards to the API as a model of or public API, you can call it in the other way, of that particular screen. So basically the public API of the screen will be defined in the TypeScript. And from the TypeScript, it will be loaded as a meta information to the API. So the API knows how to deal to the web package that is sent to the browser. Whenever this is done, the web package is loaded into the browser and start to work with the API with the business objects. On the base, this scheme looks quite straightforward and simple. In reality, we are facing with quite a number of challenges here because we're displacing the entire ISPX technology. We implemented the completely new layer of the API to communicate with the external clients, and we re-implement a complete set of the controls and application on the JavaScript using the Aurelia technology. And we started this project 2 years ago. Right now, all the controls that we do have in the application are mostly already implemented in Aurelia. But in this way, we're moving to the next step where we're describing the screen itself and everything on Aurelia. That's basically where we're moving. We do have a good progress, and Andrew will do the presentation and how it works. Moving into this technology allows us multiple benefits, starting from the fact that we can finally depreciate the ASP.NET and ending with the much more stable environment in terms of the development and debugging, because this entire environment is subjected to the quite straightforward debugging process, unlike the ASP.NET. And also it is extendable, and it's extendable not only in the way that you can change and add the fields or modify or create the new screens, but you also can create your own components for the platform and your own visualizations. And this one, your own controls. And this process is straightforward. It's not something that will require very deep knowledge and very difficult to maintain like it right now with ASP.NET. Plus, the other advantage we do have from this process is a very noticeable improvement in the performance, because we totally eliminate a very complex object model for ASPX pages, and we replace it with the Web API and API that is quite lightweighted, that is implemented on top of the Web API technology. Anyway, I will not step more into the details on that one, and Andrew will go with a live demo and what we've done there, how the customization works, and so on and etc. Now I will move to the next slide, which basically indicate the roadmap for the new UI. With the roadmap for the new UI, unfortunately, compared to the our original plan that I was presenting on the summit, we revised it and we're moving it one release cycle down. And there are two reasons why that takes place. So first of all, unfortunately, we do have the situation on our side where we get disrupted with the war in Ukraine that we totally do not support, but nothing we can do about that. And partially because of that, partially because of the other complexities we're faced with, we are probably couple of months, to be realistically, later with our deliveries as we expected. So our original idea, we were intended to deliver the developers preview and publish it in 2022 R2 release. We actually still intended to do that. The code will be there, and whatever samples or examples that Andrew is doing will be available into this product. But we are late with documenting it, with how to use it and so on. Plus, I would say that right now this technology allows you to support the inquiry screens and some basic data entry screen, but you cannot create a sales order screen using this technology yet. That's where we need this another couple of months. So from that standpoint of view, we made a decision that we will move the developer preview to 2023 R1, and hopefully I will be able to present it on the stage on the summit next year. Following the developer preview will essentially include the ability for the developer to convert any screen in the application to the new technology. It will support about 80% of the current functionality. That means for the normal screen, it should work out of the box. For the complex screens that have some custom JavaScript code or whatever, it might require some additional development or some additional efforts. And don't forget that we do have a very custom pages like ARM Designer or like customization tools itself. So that areas will not yet be supported with this developer preview. But you should be able to create the data entry screens that exist in the application using the developer preview. And the customization will be customization support will be limited. What it means, the developer preview will contain all the backend functionality and everything needed to do the customization, and customization will be supported. However, the tools will not be available. The graphical tools that allows you to do it will not be available. So the customization will be only available through the code at this stage. Then with the next release, which will be 23 R2, we will go to the technology release. And the technology release will include the conversion tools. That's the tools that you will be able to use to convert the existing screens and customizations to the new technology. All the current functionality will be supported with the technology release, and customization will be supported, but visual tools are not available. This one, I maybe need to rework it a little bit. From my perspective, it's vice versa. Customization will be available in the developer preview in 23 R1. And in 23 R2, I do expect that visual tools will be available to some extent. Now, this technology release means that you can create a new screens using the new technology. For these new screens, you can create the customization and convert this customization. And the technology release will be given to our internal application developer to run the conversion of the application to the new user interface, which we do expect to complete and become available with the product release that we're now targeting for 2024 R1. In this case, the screens, all the application screens will be converted to the new technology. The product release will contain the compatibility mode where the user will be able to select if he wants to use the new or old user interface. Primarily the reason we do the compatibility mode is because we need to provide a time lag for the migration of the customizations and give a time for the ISV to convert to the new product. And product release will contain a full set of the customization and personalization tools available. And then we will have a transition period that will continue for 2 release cycles of 1 year, where we want to depreciate the legacy user interface. Depreciation of the legacy user interface will take place in 25 R1, and at this point of time, we basically will move away from the we completely eliminate web forms technology from the product. We will drop the compatibility mode, and starting this release, the product will be running on the .NET Core and will not support the current .NET platform anymore. So this is our target to the new roadmap, and you may notice that I will not talking too much about the .NET Core conversion. We do run in this process quite actively over the past 1.5 years. We're quite advanced there, and right now a big part of the libraries that are provided with the product already .NET Core compatible, and we continue to work on this process, but we are very tightly linked to the user interface project. So the .NET Core project will be done in parallel with the new user interface. The moment the legacy UI is depreciated, we can declare that we are running on .NET Core, product can be run on Linux, and so on, etc. So this is our roadmap for the new user interface, and that also includes our .NET Core approach here. Now I will move to the next topic. Yeah, so here it's just reiterate what we doing over here. Now I'm moving to the next topic, and the next topic is our work in terms of the reporting and data insight. And this slide reflects the unified reporting architecture that we want to move to as a result of this process. So effectively, we want to end up with the 4 pretty much separated components, where we will have the data access layer as we have it right now. On top of the data access layer, we will have a report engine, and the report engine will be a component that runs the user-defined query, and that user-defined query can be done through the designer, like generic inquiry right now, through the Fluent Programming API, or through the SQL-like query language. So basically, it will give you ability to dynamically create the report query, or load this report query from the some external definition like generic inquiry. Then the data, this query will be executed and submitted to the data processing engine. And the data processing engine will be unified between all the reports, including the RM. But for the RM analytical report management, the connector will be specific because it reads from the predefined data in a very specific way. Then on top of the reporting engine, we will have a presentation layers. And the presentation layers will be basically various kind of presentation or APIs that are exposed out of there. Like you will be able to read the data through the OData, you will be able to submit the data to the inquiry screen, you will be able to submit the data to the printed forms, pivot tables, dashboards, or Microsoft Office templates. Notice that over here, the printed forms becomes a part of this architecture. That means that we will be moving the existing report designer into this architecture. And in reality, the query that you're using in the report will be not defined in the report, but consumed from the generic inquiry. And we will be extending the generic inquiry screen towards to the full-based report, web-based report designer. And it will take certain period of time for us. And then on top of that, you see that we will have a separate layer that will be a presentation designer, which will be 3 of them. At this point of time, we see 3 of them. Actually 4, including the RM, but we don't look into this RM scope of this architecture because it will be a little bit on the side. Such as inquiry designer for generic inquiries, web-based report designer for the printed forms, and pivot table designer for the complex analytics and pivots. So right now we are working on the reporting engine functionality and query designers. And with that one, I will move to the next slide that pretty much explains how do we move in terms of the roadmap here. So our first step that we're going to release will be refactored GI, refactored generic inquiry, where in reality right now the generic inquiry is very much combines both the definition of the query and the design of the query. And in that way, we are basically separating that, and we're creating a query processing engine. Coming back to this slide, we're basically segregating the query designer and report engine. That's what we're doing right now. And from that perspective, the first outcome that you will get as a refactored GI will be ability to run, for example, GI on top of the GI. So you can consume a GI as a view inside of the other GI. But from practical standpoint of view, it means that whatever you created as a definition of the query through the generic inquiry, through the code, or through some other means, will look as a data access class to the consuming client. That means it will not be distinguishable from any kind of the data access class in the system, with only one exception: it will be read-only. That means you won't be able to write data into that. Then the next step that we will be working on will be the new report visualization, where we will be improving the visualization of the reports, and that will include such kind of things as adding the charts to the generic inquiry, adding the visualization to the dashboards, and this kind of functionality. Then the next step that we will be working on, actually that's the work we already started as a specification and so on, is a segmented analysis. The segmented analysis is a deep refactoring of the sub-account functionality, where we split the sub-account into the separate segment that can be presented on the screen as an individual controls that can be linked to the external entities like customer class, project, or something else. And that can be used for selection of the reports and analytical reports in any combination. So it will work like really dimensions, individual dimensions that can be passed through the data entry screen to the general ledger. And the filtering can be used both in the reports and in financial reports. This is a big piece of functionality that includes reworking the sub-account functionality and reworking the way the general ledger history is stored in the database. So our goal to release this functionality in 2024 R2. And again, for the segmented analysis, we are considering a backward functionality where the system will be able to operate in the current mode, but you can switch and activate it in the new mode, but that will assume conversion of the data. And then the last piece that we're going to work in terms of the reporting is the implementing the report designer in the browser. It will be multiple stage. That's why it goes starting now till 2025 R1, and we will be slowly improving the generic inquiry configuration screen and adding a layout editor on top of that in order to provide the complex data calculations that are available in the reports, like grouping, like variables, like calculation of subtotals, and this kind of things. And this functionality will be released gradually. That means that we intended to complete this project in 2025 R1, but in reality we will release something in 23, something in 24, and so on and etc. So this is our roadmap towards to the reporting. Now I will move to the next slide, and I will talk a little bit about the low-code, no-code customization and what is that. So we often use this term, but on this slide I tried to summarize which pieces of applications it touches and what do we consider as a low-code, no-code customization. So let's go step by step. So first of all, the three key components of the low-code, no-code customization is a state automation engine. That's apparently the technology that monitor the state of the entity and control the properties of the entity elements dependent on the business object state. And you know that we do have this functionality, and we refactored it around 2 years ago. And since that time, we delivered numerous improvements towards to this functionality. Like, for example, we added an ability to enable disable fields through the configuration by specifying the conditions. We added an ability to integrate the state automation, like to customize the state automation through the code and through the user interface and so on, etc. We continue to work on this functionality. Some new features will be released in the upcoming release and more features are planned. But that's one key element of the low-code, no-code customization technology. The next one is the configurable business events. And configurable business events is essentially the functionality that allows you to fire the business events and put certain kind of, so that's the service that monitor changes made on the business entity and trigger the actions in response to these changes. So these actions can include emails, messages, integration scenario with external or internal systems. We delivered this functionality also around 2 years ago, and right now we do see quite intensive usage of this technology in various kind of implementations and customization projects. Then the next key piece of this functionality is a user-defined fields. The user-defined fields is apparently technology that supports extension of Acumatica business entities with the custom field without altering the database by storing the values in the key value storage. The advantage of this technology is apparently it's very easy for the user to add the new fields, specify these field properties, indicate what kind of values should be stored, and that can be done almost on the fly without really customizing the code or customizing the system. Also, we run the continuous improvements on this technology, like we added the lookups functionality, we added linkage of the user-defined fields with the conditions to enable, disable, and manage their state and behavior, and so on. Now, we're working on the next set of the technology to extend this. So essentially, with the state automation engine, configurable business events, and user-defined fields, you can do quite a lot. You can add the fields on the screens, you can define their behavior depending on the state of the document. You can basically take these fields and put it in some other place using the business events and integration scenario. So you can do quite a lot of functions already. But we're going to extend it even more, and the goal here is very straightforward. We want to minimize the amount of the code and programming involvement during the customization project, during the implementation project. We want to offload as much as possible to the consultant who implement the system versus the programmer. And the programmer, from our standpoint of view, should program a more complex things like new screens, extensions, and complex business logic. Anyway, where we work in terms of extending this functionality. So the first thing that we are doing in combination with the new user interface is a new screen layout personalization. And that's the project that we do have in development right now. So this technology is designed to support the personalization of data entry screen by a free placement of any screen fields including the UDF, on any place on the data entry form. So right now, if you can imagine, you do have a grid, and on the grid you can select which columns you want to see, in which sequence you want to see them, what is the top sequence for these events, and so on. Imagine that you will be able to do a similar type of the configuration for the entire data entry form. So now when you add the user-defined fields, it added on the dedicated tab called user-defined fields. With the new technology, you basically will be able to say, I want to add this user-defined fields into this section. Or I don't want to show these fields in this section. Or I want to move this field from this section to this section. Or I want to expose this field in this section and this section, or on this tab and this tab. So that will make the process of customizing the appearance of the screens and how it looks for the user very, very straightforward, unlike the customization projects we have now. And also this technology supports a multiple layers of the customization or personalization, where it can be a multiple customization project delivering a multiple changes to the same screen. So you don't need to basically play around and create, right now it's a problem when you need to merge multiple customization projects. So this piece in development right now, and it will be released together with a new user interface. I hope to see it in the developer preview already. The next piece of functionality we'll be working on is a business rules. Business rules is basically similar to the configurable business events, but in this case, the changes will be taking place inside of the business objects without creating the business events. And in this way, they will be suitable for implementing such kind of functionality as defaulting the field value based on the other field value, doing certain kind of calculation for the field based on the other field values, managing the field state on any screen, including the UDF from this business rules. So effectively, it will be a very similar kind of writing an extension to the screen, but in this case, you will not write the code. You will put the rules how the field should behave depending on the state of the object. And then on top of that one, our next step, and that will be a future development, we didn't start the development here right now, will be a scripting language that on top of the business rules, you will be able to place and execute a complex script that implements a complex business logic and have capability to call the other business objects in the system. That means that you will be able to, let's say, query for the data, and based on the queried data, define the field value or execute some calculations and populate some other fields. So that will be already a very close to the programming, but from the practical standpoint of view, it will be living separately from the .NET Core within the scripting language. And in this way, it will be very resistant, very stable with upgrades. Sorry, not resistant, wrong word. It will be very stable when you upgrade the system, and will allow the customization to be upgraded without much thinking about the compatibility with the new version. So all these low-code, no-code components are mainly designed for the consultant who will be implementing the system. But yet it will be possible to package them and redistribute it as a customization package as well. So now let's move to the next slide and let's think on what is our timeline towards to that. So in the 23R1, we will release the workflow business events. That will give you an ability to trigger the business events directly from the workflow or from the state automation engine without creating the push notification query and analyzing the push notification query, which will be a way more effective way of running the business event on the entity, and it will address a multiple performance issue and will not require use of the push notification technology when it's not really needed. So it will significantly improve the scalability of the technology, performance, and as well as user experience. Then we will work on the business rules, and we hope to release this technology somewhere in 2023 R2. At this point of time, I will be frank that this date is tentative right now because we're yet working on the requirements and specification for this functionality. And timeline here is very tentative. Then, together with the release of the new user interface, we will release the layout personalization technology. It will be indistinguishable feature of the new user interface, and commercially available, it will become in 24 R2. But as I mentioned earlier, I hope you will be able to see it in the developer preview already. And then our target for releasing the scripting language, which is also dependent on the new API and new user interface technology, is 2024 R2. That's our goal for that one. So generally, on the high level, this presentation gives you the idea about our timeline and what we're going to develop and what is our priorities. And I hope that now I will move to the next presentation. That is our VP of Technology, Andrew Bulanov. And I will try meanwhile answer the questions and answer that you are raising in the chat. So don't hesitate to ask them, and I will try to answer them. Okay, in this case, thank you very much, and I'm passing my presentation to Andrew.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see so many attendees. Now, developer conference. Mike, can you please stop sharing? Because
I think I did. You can still see my screen?
Yes, I see your screen.
Can somebody push me out of sharing? I call it resume share, pause share. Where is the stop share?
There we go.
Ah, stop share, okay. Sorry.
Oh, wonderful. So, I will try to show you how it looks like in code, what Mike described it as, what we may expect in the near future. As Mike mentioned, we use new technology, completely client-side based, developed by Acumatica on top of Aurelia framework. And this technology divides our presentation layer into two parts, into TypeScript view model definition and HTML layout. It allows us more granularly compose our screens and do not have a huge file with sometimes several thousands of lines of ASPX definition. Let's go to Visual Studio to see how our screens will be defined and how they will interact with our business objects that remains untouched. Here you see that we define something related to entire screen. In this entire screen, we need to specify what graph we will instantiate and what primary view will be used in this graph for navigation. Quite similar to our ASPX definition, data source control, but now it takes only one line of code. Then we define two views here. One of them for the top level form and another one for grid. if you look into our screen, it is our favorite example, GL count history inquiry. You will see that it consists of top level form and the grid. So we need to specify which class will be responsible for mapping business objects into client layout for the form, and which will be mapped for grid lines. When we specify and create collection for grid definition, we may also adjust desired grid properties using all benefits of anti-license in TypeScript definition. Now we specified a couple of properties, and we can go to definition of our classes that represents our mapping of business objects, data access classes to our user interface. You see that in opposite to our prior approach, when we had to specify which kind of layout control we need to use in every position, now it is possible. To omit these options and just say that this field is data field bound. And then our new framework will render appropriate control in place of this field, render depending on server-side state, render selector, render combo box, render checkbox, what is required. We have select here, checkbox here, and so on. The same for the grid. We also may control in some way appearance of our field by specifying PX field options. Several are available. For example, it hides these two columns. Okay, let's now switch to our definition of HTML, which will display our form and the grid at the bottom of the screen. If we switch to HTML, we will see that we have top level form divided in two columns, one column set and another one column set in two columns, and we render all fields from appropriate class filtered by so-called column group name. You see, in our definition, we have fields divided in two groups. One group for the first three fields, and another group for the second two fields. So you see that three fields for the first group are rendered into the first column, and one field is invisible, use master calendar, and other two fields, I will show you a bit later what is show currency details, are rendered for the second. At the same time, we may need to adjust appearance of some control with options provided in HTML. Because for company branch selector, we probably want to see something similar to this tree view. instead of just selector, what is not very convenient. Let's try to adjust our layout. But before doing this, I will run Node package manager in watch mode, compile it in watch mode, to be able to apply changes to our layout and our class definitions immediately. Let's wait until it compiles. And then go to our HTML definition and uncomment the specific representation of organization branch selector. You see, we are changing here control type from default selector to copy branch selector. Yes, it is currently in watch mode. We uncommented. It immediately started compiling. And if we refresh the page, it will show you new appearance of our control. If we go to our TypeScript definition, we will see that there is nothing related to multi-currency in this base class. If we go to our web form, you will see that we have here show carry detail checkbox and several fields related to currency representation, like carry period to date debit total, period to date credit total, and so on. But it works, you see, it shows us currency details. Where it is defined, it is defined in so-called extensions, which are quite similar to our C# extensions, and we are going to decompose all our pages into several parts related to appropriate application features and activate and deactivate them depending on features and licenses available in a particular site. How this extension looks like? First of all, we need to define which objects we are extending. It is done with interface definition, because even in TypeScript, what is quite powerful language, it is not possible to define multiple inheritances. So you cannot inherit from several extensions to be able to organize them into a chain. We bypass this limitation in C# with generics, but it is not so convenient how we implement it in TypeScript. You just need to specify which class you are extending. You can specify several classes here, and then define class of similar with similar name, and define desired code inside this class. You may apply an attribute. An attribute in TypeScript, it is named however decorator, which will make activation of this extension depending on a feature. In our case, it is multi-currency. Inside this extension, this is looks like our C# graph extension. You can apply some adjustments to grids, to the grid, because if you look into our web form definition, we will see that there is several properties we need to apply to our query related fields, we need first of all to specify that it should this field visibility needs to be synchronized with server-side visibility. So we are doing similar thing here, specifying column setting, specify which field we are adjusting, and allow for height which property. IntelliSense works here as well. You can select in quite convenient ways. Select all properties from grid columns you make to adjust. Also, we need to extend our classes responsible for mapping data access classes to our user to the user interface. So we add one field, show query detail, and we add 6 fields to our grid definition. And it works this way. You see, we specify that we are placing show query detail checkbox after sub count, and we place all query field after ending balance. So ending balance, show query details, 6 fields are inserted, and then 2 fields continues how it works. Okay, this is TypeScript application. At the same time, we probably want to adjust HTML definition to make more flexible adjustment to our script. In our case, we just add this field to an existing column, to the element of existing column, but probably we want to add one more column and place some fields there. Add tabs, add forms, add pop-ups panel, and so on and so forth. So we can go to HTML file, name it in the same way as our TypeScript file, and for example, uncomment our third column, and compile. And also we need to move our checkbox into this third column. Adjusting group name of this checkbox. So it even refreshed automatically. It didn't take much time, 3 seconds. And our checkbox now is placed in a separate group. If we look, as I said before, into our grid class definition that is responsible for transferring amounts from data access class responsible for details into our grid, you will see that here we applied these options to hide a couple of fields, because ledger ID is specified on the top and is not required in our grid. If we look into our Outlook plugin classes definition, we will see that these options are quite powerful and will allow the same flexibility as was seen in web form definition. So you can make field read-only without altering, say, server-side code. You make it render it without a label. You can switch label to a new string. These strings will be collected and translated if required. You can hide some fields, and also you can combine some fields into one row, placing one field after another. Currently, we are quite good with this read-only grid, and we worked hard for the past 2 quarters on updatable grid. Now it is almost ready. Almost ready. I can show you chart of account. Where we can add, for example, row already. Save it. The server. Long operation, but I hope it will complete successfully. As Mike said, it is faster than our prior form approach. Same for navigation, the top level form. Because we don't consume any resources on server side, it is completely done. It is completely done on client side. So all these customizations are compiled with Node.js run on demand, and then packaged with spec and executed in client browser. I think this probably it from my side. Thank you for the attention.